What's going on, y'all? Welcome to the San Diego County Bicycle Coalition podcast, The Weekly Spoke. My name is Elizabeth Bowersox, and I'm joined here with my co-host, Daniel Rodriguez. I'm taking the lead here as the host today, but Daniel's going to chime in with some questions. We have a very, very special guest today. Her name is Josie Fouts, and she is a paracyclist here in San Diego, and we're excited to talk to her today about her recent adventures in Moab, Utah, and her story and her impact on this world. And how's it going, Josie?
Oh, so good. I am so happy to be here. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. So I was telling you just a second ago, I also was working on this blog today because there's some news articles that have been coming out about the Moab trip, but to the majority, to the masses who are non-para, it's great. It's cool that we're getting coverage. But the same piece of information is causing the adaptive community to kind of be stressed because there's a lot of inaccuracies. And so really a big part of what I'm doing is to try to be a voice for the adaptive nation. And so a lot of the adaptive nation relies heavily on audible information. So thank you for helping me do my job a lot easier. Yeah, it's a win-win.
Well, yeah, we're super happy to hear about this. And so just for some context, Josie just went for an FKT. This is also known as the fastest known time on the White Rim Trail in Moab, Utah. All right, that's a 100-mile desert trail in southeast Utah, and she's here today to talk about this trip and her adventures, the highs and lows, her gear. I'm most curious about what you brought, what bike you were on. So we're just gonna jump in with some questions here. So how did this come to fruition? Who decided to do this, and who were you with? And tell me about that.
So this actually stemmed out of the pandemic. Okay. So I was training for the Tokyo Paralympics, and then when they got postponed, and without the results of pressure, but then also a community telling me what bikes I can ride and where I'm allowed to ride and what's the quote safest, I was well, I just want to ride my bike outside, outside, not technically outside, but inside of cities and lines. I want to be out on the trail. I want to be out on the trails, where everything is dynamic. Everything I'm looking at has depth and beauty to it. And nothing is perfect. There is no perfect line that you take because the trail changes over time and with weather. And I realized that's the environment where I can flourish the most, because when I see two different types of trees in alpine wind adapting in their own way, but also together at the same time to overcome the same thing. For example, we have pine trees. They're super aerodynamic, and they are rigid with the wind. They're we're not moving, no way, blow us as hard as you want. But then you have aspen trees, and they're less roll, less flow, even with the slightest breeze, you can hear them just do their thing. And it's magical because I think the pine trees are a perfect analogy for the type of rider who wants to go fast. And that was the type of rider who I was training for the Tokyo Paralympics. It was all about the individual time trial and getting as aero as possible. Except, imagine an aspen tree trying to do that and just curl its leaves up to try to be a pine tree.
It's not.
Exactly. That's kind of how I felt, because the equipment wasn't working for me. I couldn't find a bike small enough, and that has nothing to do with my adaptations as a person with a limb difference. And I'm come on, where are the bikes for the short people? And they're oh, they're in different countries. And I'm okay, so you're an international brand. Can I get a bike that fits me? And they're no. And I'm
Okay.
Yeah, wait a minute. And then I think about it, and I'm man, if this is a capitalist world, we say it is, tall people are short people at some point in their life, right? And then short people are short people for the majority of their life.
Yeah.
if we're catering to the masses, like, why are small bikes impossible to find? And especially on top of, like, a pandemic and having supply chain issues, like, I think this is the opportunity to refocus and to give the people of the bicycle industry, like the artists, the frame makers, an opportunity. And that's pretty much what I've done here with this Moab trip. So you asked me, like, what bike did I ride? And I rode, it was like a prototype for this new bike brand, Newhouse Metalworks, based in San Francisco. And it's 100% custom. Like, not just custom to my size and the person who I am, like the objective measurements, like saddle height, like slack head tube angle, 66 degrees, I don't know, people I think will like that number. And it's like a little bit longer reach for me, so it's kind of nice to be able to like gain more leverage. But it also is designed to like complement the style of rider who I am. So back in 2020, when I started first riding a mountain bike, I refused the use of prosthetics because I was just like, that's not a part of who I am. That's not a part of my identity. And there's nobody on this earth that I thought could change my mind, especially myself. But the bicycle, specifically the mountain bike, changed my mind because I started riding and I was like, okay, well, if I pull really hard on my right side of my bars, then my bike's just gonna go in a circle. So I need to like rest my left arm on top, and I actually had like a bar end facing in, and then on top of that there was like a 3D printed cup, and so I used that to at least give my arm like a platform. You know, kind of like this is our platform, right? And so, but it was like I still couldn't like grip the bars and like lift them, right?
Okay.
And not just because like I don't have the fingers, but also I don't have the muscle memory is what I'm learning. Like, it's easy for somebody who has had two hands to be like, oh, I can use this prosthetic to do these things that I normally can't. Like, for me, I have to like create a new like neuro pathway to make it happen. And then things start to like make sense once I start like being able to leverage my bars. And I'm like, oh, is this why my left shoulder is like chronically injured all the time? And I was like, you know, I'm pretty like dense, like as a scientist, like you have to like really say the same thing at least 4 times, because if the 4th time or one of those 4 times it's wrong just by chance or I misinterpret it, the other 3 times make it statistically possible and like probable that like this is still the truth. That's how my brain works.
Yeah. Well, and you got a degree in science at UCSD.
Yes.
Okay, so that's how you got out to San Diego.
So I got a degree in Colorado State University where I met Taylor, my partner, and it was in nutrition and immunology. So where those 2 systems meet in our body is the gut. So I have all this knowledge about gut health while everybody else is kind of like trying to figure it out. And I'll let you know the information out there is muddied on purpose. They don't want it to be clear because they don't want to admit that like we don't know shit. Like, pun intended. Like, it's a pun, so I'm allowed to swear, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I worked in a microbiome lab. At UCSD.
Got it.
That's what brought me out here. And then that's when I started commuting and like really harvesting like a lot of base miles. And I lived with Taylor, and he was like, you know, training at that point like 8-9 years of his life. And he's like, oh, I'm gonna go out on like a 20, 40, 80, 100-mile mountain bike or 100-mile ride. And I'm like, well, if everything is relative, and to me it is, like nothing is absolute, nothing is the same forever.
Yeah.
That's entropy. Like, so everything's relative. I was like, if he can do that, like continuously throughout the week, I can do 14 miles one way and then just get the shuttle back. And so then soon, like just commuting 14 miles one way turned into both ways some days. And then I started working on the weekends, doing 48-hour stool collections. That's what I was doing on my weekends. Like,
awesome party. That sounds like a party.
And work got more stressful. I wasn't like taking care of my health, to be honest, because, you know, that wasn't the reason why everybody else was there. Even though I rode my bike in, I always got like side comments like, hey, like you should get a car and pay for parking and gasoline and sit in traffic like everyone else because, I don't know, peer pressure? Yeah. And I was like...
Definitely a social thing nowadays that, like, I don't know why, if you're not, like, people won't consider you an adult unless you have a car and, like, unless you have, like, this high-paying job. And it's like, well, I can still get around anywhere I want on a bike, and it's a lot faster sometimes, and it's more fun, you know? Like, I'm not sitting in traffic. I go through trails, you know, and stuff like that. Like, I don't know why people always think you need to have a car to live.
There's literally nothing more freeing than, like, coming to a bottleneck of traffic and just, like, riding up, like, boom, passing everybody. So that's great. And like, I think people think that we live in a society, right? So if you're not, if everyone's not the same, it's like you're different. You're not like us, but F that. Like, that's not how we should live. We all should be unique and do what's best for us.
Specialized bike? How are you, the cyclist?
Like, that kind of mindset is based on a perfect world. Like, everybody starts off with the same amount of resources at the same amount of time or the same point in time, and they get the same opportunities as everybody else. And that's just not the way it works. So, like, why are we even trying that way? Like, we're trying to force, like, a piece of a puzzle that just doesn't fit there. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, you know, like, we know. We know.
Yeah, as cyclists, that's something we face all the time. And I'm sure for you, it's been even harder. And just the shit that you have to put up with. And, like, it's crazy. But you've persevered and, like, gone off and done this crazy trail. And can we talk more about that and the specifics? And, like, something I wanted to specifically talk to you about is, like, your vision, because I know so many athletes, especially professional athletes, they have their line, they have their trail, and they see it. They see themselves achieving that goal and even beyond. And I just want to hear what that was like for you before this.
Oh my God. Like, I think a lot of leadership takes creativity and visualizing. And to be honest, my, like, actual vision is very poor. Like, if you know, like, the numbers and everything, you walk into Walgreens or something, and they're like, oh, reading glasses, like, 0.25, 1.25. Mine's, like, -9.
Oh, my.
Yeah. So I have this, like, higher proprioception, I think, to energy and, like, the way things flow. And I think, like, that is something that is untold part of the adaptive community, because I really resonate with people who are visually impaired, like the way that they talk to themselves, the way their guides talk to themselves. I think the vision here is for people who have any type of impairment, and let's be honest, that's 100% of the people. Nobody is perfect.
Yeah.
And I want the message to be clear. So my vision is really focused on the adaptive nation. Like, people who aren't just, like, visually impaired, but also audibly impaired, like, physically impaired, cognitively. Like, I want the message to be clear in that way, because that's who I'm speaking to. So, like, in that process, catering to the people who have the biggest needs, I believe will make an easier path for everyone else. Like, if you think of, like, a storm, and you have, like, this huge, awesome trail system, like Penasquitos, but there's, like, the storm and all these trees go down. Like, are you going to move the trees that are on, like, cobblestones or tunnels or cobbles, like, where it's, like, single track? Or are you going to first remove the trees that are on the multi-use path, that are, like, wide enough for anybody to get through in both directions, right? Like, because once you pave the way for people who need things and accessibility the most, then, like, anybody else, it's easy to follow.
Yeah.
And that was kind of what we proved here on this trip. So 2 days before our attempt, there's, like, this once in 1,000 year, like, flood. And I'm like, come on, man, what are the odds?
You're like, yes.
It's like 0.11%. And I'm like, damn. Like, should we just quit and go get a lottery ticket or what?
Oh my gosh, the odds.
Right?
Wow.
So it made for really difficult conditions, not only for bicyclists and adaptive cycles, but mainly like vehicles, like
the
cars.
four-wheelers.
Yeah, so one of the misconceptions of the end image I had in my head versus reality was I thought the vehicle would be like bunny hopping us, like going up, getting water to the people in front, like we won't be together the whole time because we have different strengths. Like, I love descending. It's just fun. I just like let it rip, and there's like no care at all about like any of the consequences. And because I know speed is my friend. But then like for somebody else, like who maybe has like a more difficult time balancing, like maybe it's not really the downhill that's their strength, But so anyways, like my vision was that the follow vehicle, the support vehicle with all the water and the extra lights and the food, they would be accessible. But because of the way the conditions were, we were faster than the follow vehicle.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Like that was, I think, the catch-22 of the whole trip. It was awesome, but also kind of crappy at the same time because we're like waiting an hour and a half because my friend Annika's adaptive cycle battery just died. And they have the extra because they weigh like 30 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah,
You can't carry that.
Yeah. So I think that was a really powerful kind of like vision where it was like, okay, people can see this happening. Like, I don't know how we'll display it like in the final product. But also it was kind of funny, the follow vehicle got lost. Like you're in the middle of the desert and there's not many like bunny trails or rabbit holes you can go down. They just go off into campsites. And there's this one point where like we're on top of this ridge climbing into a headwind and it's getting really sandy. Ooh. And we like look over and there's like massive canyons. Like we are in the canyon. Like it's beautiful. There's like a 30-foot wide river called the Green River, but it was like brown, technically. But all around it was super green because of the rain. So it was like greens and reds and like oranges and clays just like contrasting each other. And then like 0.1% of that vision was like this tiny white truck, like not on the White Ribbon Trail. And we're like, That is our follow vehicle. That is our support vehicle. And we're like, oh man, okay. So, you need to turn around. So we're like yelling at them, but they can't see us because we can barely see them and we have the advantage point, you know? So we send Taylor down to like on his bike. He's already doing 100 that day. He's like, oh, what's another like 3 miles? Yeah. So he goes down to like tell them to turn around. And we're like watching it from the top, like eating snacks. Yeah. And it's just like,
just chilling. It's
so funny. It's hilarious.
Was that the only way you guys could communicate? Like, you guys didn't have any phones or anything like that?
Yeah, no service out there for sure. Yeah, because the plan was to stick together, right, yeah. You know, as much as possible. Yeah. But then, you know, that took a lot longer than we thought in the beginning. So we're out there. Like, we planned to be at, like, mile 55 around 3 p.m. And around 3 p.m., I think we were at, like, 48. Okay. So we weren't that far behind, but we were behind a schedule. I, like, slowed down in half the time that Taylor did it, like, in 2020. So that was, like, one of the awesome parts of the trip. But then it was also cool because we would reach these, like, giant spots where there was a landslide. So it was just, like, huge boulders, not just, like, rocks, boulders, like, covering the road. Yeah. That's it. Like, it's just, like, so there's, like, a cliff to the side to the right, and there's, like, a 15 to 20-inch gap, like, right next to the side of the cliff that's, like, really low risk for two wheels where one is in front of another. Yeah. And then there's a bunch of rocks to the left. And Annika rolls up, and she has two wheels next to each other, and she's just like, I'm not going that way. It's, like, not about, like, if or, like, having them spot her. Yeah. She's just like, no. Like, the way that you have gone, even though it works for you, does not work for me. I need help. I need these rocks out, is what she said. She was like, we're either going over the rocks or we need to move the rocks. Wow. And she's in, like, a 35-pound bike. She has, like, about 4 times as much like body weight and snacks and bags and gear on top of that. And we're like, man, that's going to be heavy to carry. And then all of a sudden, Taylor, Jonathan de Guzman, and Kyle Kirby just start hucking rocks over the edge. They're like, all right, you want rocks gone? We're going to get them all gone. And it was just so awesome because it was like, nobody even like stopped to think about it. They were just like, all right, she said they need to be gone. We're going to get these barriers out of your way. We can't go around this one. So we're just going to literally demolish it by using teamwork. Yeah. And it was honestly faster than if we try to like pick her up and like roll her over. So like that was also one of just like the greatest moments because like that's what we literally are here to do. Work together to overcome these barriers. Like either tear them down or go around them.
Wow.
But like I kind of like that it stormed and flooded because the visual is going to be so dramatic on film.
The film. Yeah, so in the whole, this is filmed by a film crew, was with you, following you.
Yeah.
For the whole trip.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was kind of like a mix of videographers because like we're going over various terrain. Yeah. So a lot of the interviews that we did before the White Rim, we did with scenic bylines based out of Salt Lake City. And the director, Louis, he had a paralyzing accident in 2020. And so I was like, you know, the same thing that's happening with like these other articles coming out, like when there's a non-para filter or a middleman or storyteller, like things get lost in translation. And your way of living also is just different. It's not just a personal, I'm not trying to be personal, it's just the way we are. Like the person we are off the bike and on the bike should essentially be the same because it's technically the same person, right? So it was like, so he wasn't the first film crew. So back in 2020, when I first learned about the White Rim Trail, just by being like, okay, so everything's shut down, it's like healthy to ride your bike and it's healthy to be outside, like let's go camping. Like bike shops don't really need extra help right now because everybody's like, oh man, are we going to get laid off or not? Yeah. So me and Taylor were like, we're just going to go on a 5-week road trip. And the funny thing about it is like I'm a terrible planner. I hate planning because I'm so good at adapting, you know? Like that's the double-edged sword of that. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try to plan. And I planned like 5 weeks and it was going to be awesome. We're going to go up the Pacific Coast West all the way to Seattle and then loop it around and then like hit up like Moab and stuff and come back through Flagstaff. And then like the day we leave, everything that we planned just starts setting on fire. Oh. And I'm like, oh, well, even though I planned it that way, I'm not just going to go drive into fire. Yeah. So I was actually pretty stoked because I was like, well, here we go. I got my wish, you know? Like, I love just like living life on the edge of my seat or my saddle. And so we just shot the good gaps of air quality and also just focused on like who we knew because we couldn't camp. And we were like, that kind of like spoils the camping trip. Yeah, and that's how it's affordable because like you don't pay for housing. Right. And so we were like, okay, well we have to like reach out to our friends. So we ended up just going on this like epic like, I don't know what you call it, just like journey of discovering like who is there when you need them the most. And it turns out like we can get pretty far if we just focus on what we do have. And so we ended up in Moab twice. And the first time I rode a road bike into Canyonlands, and which is just like an out and back 12-mile road. And it's like pretty rolling, so it's really fun on a road bike. And then you can stop along the way, look at the White Rim Trail and the Canyonlands. And I just remember being like, wow, like, what is that trail down there? I'm like, I get that there's a lot of beautiful things right here that is in the big picture, but I can't stop staring at this like faint light trail. And I'm just like, man, I'm just so fixated on it. And then I was like, okay, well, I'll do a little research, found out at the visitor center it's the White Rim Trail, you need a permit to be on it. I'm like, oh man, okay, well, not this time. And then we ended up in Boise, Idaho, like 3 weeks later, and we were like, okay, so the fires are under control, like, do we go back to the original plan? Or do we keep making it up as we go? And our friend that we were staying with was going to Moab. And he was being super casual about it. He's just like, oh yeah, I'm just going to meet some friends. We're going to ride some mountain bikes. You want to go? And I was like, okay, yeah, let's go. And then we meet up, and they're all like riding the White Rim Trail in one day.
Oh.
You know? And so Taylor at that time had an steel All-City with essentially a fat bike. It was a hardtail. And he had no idea that he was going to do it that day, and just like jumps in and does it.
Yeah.
And I was like, damn, that was inspiring.
Yeah.
And so that's really why I wanted to go back. A little bit of like, wow, like I knew I couldn't do it then. I actually like crashed in Boise. So I was like, I need to chill.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, and also like, I also knew I needed something else. It wasn't my time. I wasn't ready, even though I wanted to be. Like, my brain was moving way too fast, and my body couldn't keep up, and it was clear because I was injured. I was in a crash. And I was like, okay, well...
Not this time.
Yeah,
but
not
we
this
want to
time.
come back.
Yeah, exactly. So then 2021 happened. Everything went back to whatever we say is normal.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, and to be honest, I was like very depressed. I was just like, man, like I go on these group rides and everybody's pointing out the worst in the road, and then like subconsciously like pointing out the worst in each other, and I was just like, it's not them, it's like the environment that we're in. Because I knew as a scientist, like we are a product of our environment. If we get good signals in, we will be good. If we get bad signals in, we will be bad. And it's not necessarily that it's about good or bad or right or wrong or right or left or hand or stub or like whatever it is. Like it's just about like accepting like where you are and who you are and what makes you the way you are. And so I've learned through riding my mountain bike that I am really stubborn. Like, there are some things I will refuse to give up. And one of those things used to be asking for help. And one of those things, a second one of those things, was using a prosthetic. And the mountain bike has helped me reevaluate the way that I think about things. And I think that is the powerful thing about riding in general. But it's also about the environment you're in. Like if you're actively learning to not point out every rock on the trail because you'll literally get nowhere, like you start to pick and choose your battles that you have to fight like socially. And so like this is the battle I choose to fight. Like I want to be a voice for the adaptive nation because people are interested in what I say, and no matter how much I try to hide it, like I am an adaptive athlete. So I'm like, all right, here we go. Give me the prosthetic. Let's do all the bike things. Like, if we're going to do it, I'm going to do it the right way because I don't know left.
Gosh, you're such a force, and I love that about you, and we love that about you. Josie's in the like cycling world, obviously in San Diego, and every time I've seen her out in social situations, and I'm just gonna pause just to say that you're always smiling, laughing, and picking on someone, but like all out of love, and we're just is really cool that you're here, and I wanted to quickly talk to you about the National Ability Center. I see you're wearing it on your shirt. So they're in Park City, Utah, and they're a nonprofit like the coalition. So tell me how you got involved with them and the work you do and when you visit them. And
Yeah. So one of the adaptive athletes who actually set the only self-supported FKT for para-athletes in Moab, Stephen Wilk, he introduced me to the NAC because, like myself, he was born with his limb difference, and he, like myself, tried to hide it for a really long time. So I'm 31, he's 37, and so he has a little bit more experience from me.
Yeah.
So like I look up to him, and it's great because like he's the one who was like, well, the NAC really helped me accept who I am and to like not hide it. Like that's the biggest thing. And like not only is my brain happy now that I don't hide this, but like my body, there's huge release because I noticed when I first got a prosthetic, like every time I would pass somebody that I didn't know, like my arm tenses, like first without my knowledge, and now I realize it because now I'm like, well, I always had a reason to tense it, and I'm like holding on to the bars or something, so I'm like utilizing that uncomfortable feeling and changing it into like a force for efficiency on the bike, and so, but it without that active need to do that and the space for my arm to like metaphorically and physically breathe, I'm like, wow, that's really interesting.
To notice that.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, and I think everybody kind of has something about themselves that they don't want other people to know, but it's like the more you are close to people, like those things are going to come out, and like if they're really your friend, they won't care.
Yeah.
Because they will know that it's either like a part of you that makes you who you are, and there's like a reason. Like for example, like me being able to adapt so well means like I can't plan. That's it. Like it's just you know who I am, and I accept it. And it's not that I don't want to plan. I'm just like focusing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And what was the question? Oh my God.
Just like the work that you've done. I saw on your Instagram. You've gone there and you've spoken. And like, is there anything like on the horizon you're doing with them, or like, just kind of like.
Yes, definitely. So the NAC is all about focusing what we can do, right? Because it's the National Ability Center. It's not the National Disability Center, which like brings a different connotation to the table.
Sure.
And so I really enjoy that, like, just visibly, it speaks my language. And what I learned training for the Tokyo Paralympics is that I am not a summer sport person. So I'm going to go back there this winter and try some skiing. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Because they're like, well, we hear what you're saying, but like you're still like in the middle of the desert, like doing something that works against your body. Like, let us help you, like, find your potential. And so I'm really excited about that. And yeah, just being an ambassador for them, because they are really, I believe, leaders of the type of community that the Adaptive Nation should be modeled off of, because it's always focusing on what we can do and what we can have. And it makes you realize that everything is temporary. Like, our bodies are temporary. Like, to be honest, anyone's able-bodied or para. Like, and even, like, times are temporary. Like, buildings, establishments, bicycle shops, like, everything has an ebb and flow. And so it's about taking the opportunity to seize the good moments and to focus on, like, what we can get done today. Not like what we should have done yesterday or supposed to do tomorrow. Like, focus on what you can do today and do it really well. You know? Just like have that focus to be able to just like overcome anything, because you are so good at doing what you do and nobody else can do what you do as good as you. And that's the kind of atmosphere that the National Ability Center gives to anybody. You don't have to have a permanent disability or impairment. It could be temporary. And if you need help doing what you love to do to get outside, they will help you. And it's awesome.
That's so awesome.
Right?
Are you so stoked about skiing?
I am. I'm also kind of nervous because I've never, like, played to my strengths. I love the struggle of life. That's why I am literally biking on difficult terrain, because I physically love it. And I've realized that if I ignore this part of myself, well, then I'm not going to be myself.
Yeah.
So I have to, like, find a way to utilize that energy for a benefit. And so physically, it works out, because the more difficult it is physical, then the stronger you'll be. is how I see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And achieving your full potential, and that what you just said about the NAC, and they help you do what you can do and be better and go beyond. Like, I even got a little emotional like listening to you say that. So that's super cool. And do you have anything else on your horizon that you like want to share with us?
So I'm
if
going
you
to
can?
go to the Outride Summit next week in Morgan Hill
Okay.
at Specialized headquarters. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there are some of that virtual because I heard about it. I think I'm going to be going like attending virtually.
Perfect.
But yeah, Outride, we work with Outride, you work with Outride. Okay, cool. So is Morgan, did you say Morgan Hill? Is that in California?
It's a little bit south of San Jose.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm going to be on a panel with Meg Fisher,
Okay.
Christopher Belvins, and his sister Kaylee. And like these are huge names in cycling, and I'm also kind of like nervous. And also, I think I just see myself differently
Yeah.
than the way other people see me, because that's just perspective.
Yeah, perceiving.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
they're like really elevating and changing the way I view myself because I am with them. I'm not there to like give them coffee. Like
No, you're there. You
Yeah.
are there at the table having the discussion with them.
So I'm like very excited
Oh.
to have that opportunity,
Yeah.
and they're going to give me a no, that's egg. No, EGG is egg. EEG test while I'm riding my bike so I can watch my brain activity.
Whoa.
Yeah. And so I'm going to ask them if we can do a test of like, okay, we'll probably be on a trainer, to be honest.
Yeah.
But if we put up like visuals of streets versus visuals of like
Trails.
nature, because I've read research where your brain works better even if you look at a tree versus like a flat wall. Like you remember things better.
Yeah.
Like it's the way we work, and we have this research and we have this knowledge. Why not use it to our benefit? Like, let's work harder, not smarter. Wait, no, oh my God, no.
Let's work hard and smart.
Let's work hard and smart and then play really hard too. That's so funny. So, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
So kind of step back into the film. So where can people learn more about that, and like when does that come out? Do you know any details on that?
So our estimate is that it will be out in the spring of
okay.
2023.
Cool.
But I'm adding like gear list details to Orucase's website, their blog page.
Nice.
Okay, yeah. So a part of like trying to get rid of that ableist lens means like I need 100% control of the words that come out of my mouth or like that I type. And so I'm just going to utilize the platforms that I have.
Yeah.
And I know that like, one bike industry company isn't as good as like getting on to like Velo News. But I think a more accurate message to a smaller amount of population is better than an inaccurate message to a larger population.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So yeah, you can check that out on Orucase's website. That was the blog I was working on, and that was funny. We brought it full circle.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully you guys have like a watch party or something. That way we could all watch the film together and then maybe chat and talk about it.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Well, so Outride also came on as like a last minute sponsor, which is awesome. And they want to host like a official premiere at the Specialized headquarters when it happens. So I'm gonna try to probably figure out like if there's a bike race or an event that we can like pair it with to give people like the benefit of the doubt, because I do want the San Diego community to be there, but at the same time, like that's a space that they have and it would be super cool. So I think if we all could get to like, I don't know, like Mission Crit or something, like that'd be sick, right?
Yeah.
Like go crit it up, and then like instead of traveling on your quote recovery day, we're just sitting down watching popcorn, like in the Peter Sagan room at the Specialized headquarters.
That's true. That'd be cool. That'd be cool.
Right?
Yeah. And then one last question before I forget, but going back to the National Ability Center, is there anything like that in San Diego, or is it only based in Utah? Like, is there something that people could also get involved here in San Diego about that?
Yeah, for sure. So we have the Challenge Athletes Foundation, and this might be a thing that we want to, okay. Just like the words, I really have a problem there. It creates a sense of like you're giving to somebody as a charity. And it is a nonprofit, so it's technically a charity, but it's just like as an athlete and an ambassador, I've just had like interesting and just like honestly traumatic experiences because like this one time, so there's this ride from San Francisco to San Diego, and I just got back from the ATB challenge where I learned how to roll over anything, and I was like, oh, sick, I'm gonna hop in on day 7, like it's the home stretch. I'm just there to like help people like stay motivated for the last day, because that's like the hardest part. And so, but they, wanted to do the thing every band wants to do, which is make me feel like I'm not special by putting me in like the clothes that everybody else is in, and it doesn't fit me, and I'm like, but I'm like, I don't want to wear it, and it doesn't work. Like, just don't give it to me. But instead, I actually wore this skirt that I'm wearing, and it's like a floor-length skirt, but it's just made out of spandex. So I like tied it up on the side, and I was like, cool. I got shorts underneath, like bibs, and I'm like riding along, and like physics happens, things like unravel, but like also physics is physics, and people are like concerned about my skirt like crashing myself out. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, well, physics being what it is, like if I generate more force and outweigh that physics of the skirt, then my physics will win, and the faster I go, like the more safe it will be, and I'm like pulling everybody home. And I'm like, great, I'll just pull the whole time. I don't care, like, fine. And even after that, they were like, man, like, we're really concerned. Like, you technically haven't crashed yet, but I can't stop thinking about it. And I was like, okay, well then, don't draft off me.
You're like, why are you telling me what my situation is right now?
Yeah, like
I am completely aware of my situation. I'm fine. Don't be saying stuff to me.
Yeah, so,
Goodness.
like, it got to this point where the, quote, ride leader for this Challenge Athletes Foundation fundraiser, and just to let you know, in this small group, I was the only challenged athlete, quote unquote. Wow. A woman kicked me out of the group ride because I was wearing a skirt.
That's lame.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I mean, that sucks to hear that, because like that's definitely like gatekeeping in cycling world. It's like you have to wear spandex sometimes, or like be fully kitted. It's like I wear shorts and like shoes, and that's it. Like maybe sandals sometimes. I just want to cruise down the street, but I don't know, man. Like people want to put you in a box, and if you're not in that box, then you can't be part of the club, or something like that.
Right.
It's kind of lame.
Right. Yeah. So after that, I just totally stopped. I was like, I don't need this. I called Taylor. He picked me up with Moose. I cried a little. We moved on. And then I found the National Ability Center, and everything was like lifted off my shoulders. And there's still like moments where I tell them, because I'm like, I don't want to be taken advantage of again. And so I tell them that, and I tell them my experiences, and I tell them like, I know it's unfair to you that I have this like prejudice, but like I want to be open and like let you know that like I'm aware of it, and I'm here to like talk about it. Like I want to make sure that like we are on the same page every step of the way in our relationship. And honestly, like it doesn't make it more like time consuming. I think it makes it actually more of a learning experience for both parties. Because like, for example, these articles and stuff coming out with like an ableist lens, like the adaptive nation is not happy. And I'm here for them. Like everybody else, like don't really care what you have to say, but like it matters to me that their voice is heard. And so like this has been a huge like learning experience for me, because there was a moment where the National Ability Center was a co-title sponsor for this film. And I'll let you know that like to make a film like this, like where you go in the middle of the desert and have all this like liability, if you look at it through a film industry lens, it's really expensive. Because like think of like Tour de France style. You're on a motorbike. You have to rent a motorbike, get 2 people, one to drive it, one to hold the camera. And then it's like a heavy camera, so you got like a harness on and everything. And then I told the original film crew, who were non-para, like just straight down the middle, that's it. Like they're just non-para. And I was like, hey, I have to bring my friends. and these 5 other cyclists are down to do a crazy thing like this, so I can't turn them down. Like, there's not a lot of people who are also going to enjoy this as much as me. So, like, they are here, and we have to give them the same opportunity. Like, and that first non-para crew, they were like, well, they jumped to conclusions. They were like, that's 5 more motorbikes we have to rent. That's more gas to put into them. That's 10 more people. That's 5 more cameras we have to also rent, because in the film industry, it's more profitable if you don't keep one mostly outdated piece of equipment, you just rent. So they're like, no, this can't happen. And they essentially like just ditched me. After I said, like, I will not do this alone. I have to do it with
your support, with your people.
Because I'm not the only image for an adaptive athlete.
Yeah. Heard. Like, it's more obvious that adaptive athlete can't have a stereotype. Like, it should be obvious with everybody else, but, like, it's more obvious with us because you can visually see us. And, like, what we do is we just move differently. So the National Ability Center, that production crew, like, when they decided to pull out, they also canceled a $25,000 contract with the only cycling industry sponsor that we had. And that's when I learned that this whole thing for both parties was actually not about me, because nobody came to me. Wow. Except the National Ability Center. And they were like, this has to still happen. And I'm like, yes, it does. It dang does.
Yeah. And it was great because we found out a way to reduce the cost of production, include everybody, and reduce the cost and reduce the carbon footprint.
Cool.
And to get everybody the own rights, their own image, because that is important.
Yes. I know that so many athletes, and especially para-athletes, get taken advantage of, and their image, and even you say this, like, your image is used without your permission, and you haven't gotten any of the profit, or they don't want to give you any of the profit. And you're like, what, you're using my story, and you're not even having a conversation with me, and it sounds like this film company that ditched you, I mean, it's probably a blessing in disguise, right?
Exactly.
That you didn't end up working with them, but, like, have some empathy. I mean, this amazing girl, this is her story, and you just want to exploit it, and, like, what is that?
Well, I think that them leaving was kind of them giving me that opportunity, because they knew I was going to go out with these athletes no matter what, whether they were with me or not. And, like, I think based on the concerns I hear out of the people around me, especially from this trip, like, a lot of times I guess I give off this sense that, like, I'm going to do things without you, or, like, it doesn't matter, like, what you say or your opinion is, like, I'm going to make this happen, because, like, that's the double edge of that sword of being, like, a leader, like, an advocate, is, like, I have to not care. And it's great because I don't. And so now I'm just like, oh, this is just, like, a healthy outlet for that, like, thing I always struggled with growing up. So it turned out, like, the answer to all of our problems was the bicycle. Because instead of using motorbikes, I was like, well, why don't we just use bicycles? Because, like, we're interesting subjects to look at. And to be honest, like, all of these, like, nicer cameras, they're just trying to make normal things look better than they actually are, to be honest. And because, like, normal things are boring, but we are not normal. And so it's like, it doesn't matter what quality lens you have. Like, you can tell I don't have a left hand. You can just tell. Like, it doesn't matter how blurry the image is or, like, slightly out of focus. Like, it's pretty obvious. And so also, on top of that, our environment, we're, like, in national park land. Like, it's amazing and it's beautiful. Like, again, it doesn't matter how good of a lens you need, because, like, everything, like, it already has depth and dimension with whatever you have. Yeah, so we just use action cameras, put them on GoPros, or, put them on bicycles. But the hard thing was, like, just like it's hard to find para-athletes who want to ride the White Room Trail, like, what, like, support person is going to show up? Because it has to be, like, a, quote, easier ride for them than what they're used to. Right? To make it kind of like a win-win situation. Because if they're doing an effort and we're doing an effort, nobody's like checking in and making sure like bikes are okay, like mental states are okay, bodies feel good. And like that's what we need. Like we need people to like give us positive reinforcement to like listen to our bodies. And because I think a lot of times any type of athlete, they are over-glorified for not listening to their body. And in my experience, riding a bicycle, I need to listen to my body more. And so, like, there was only a few people who were down. So my partner, Taylor, he was down, obviously. Like, he's the only reason why I'm, like, doing all this stuff. And then I turned towards the San Diego community. Like Jonathan de Guzman grew up here, like he's down. Like Kyle Kirby, he grew up here, he was down. And then I also like kind of reached out to the people who like I knew could already like hold a camera in focus and ride a bike for 100 miles. So I reached out to Leah Wilcox and her partner Rue because I went with them on this like epic journey in Spain that I 100% did not know if I was going to survive. Like,
oh, cool.
And they helped me realize like, oh, if I can just go like survive in the middle of a country where I don't speak the native language and there's only like 7 people per square kilometer, like, do I need to know Spanish in Spain? Maybe not. Maybe I can just gesture and smile and like get away with body language. And it worked. Yeah. Oh my God, it was wild. So I asked them, I was like, hey, would you be interested in like helping out? I explained the situation. They were so in. They're like, yes, of course. Like, when and where do we have to be? And so they joined, and it just ended up being like a really eye-opening experience for me because I was at not my lowest, but like, if you look at my bank account, I'm financially at my lowest. And it's like, these are the people who are here that don't care about that because I don't care about that. Because like, to be honest, like that's a race where I metaphorically like have to start like a day after the gun's gone off. Like why would I like try to do that to myself? I'm just putting myself in a bad position because like the cost of living for an adaptive like person is like way higher because they don't make the things that we need. And we're like, and then it's more expensive. And then like insurance really is more of a barrier than like helping us achieve healthcare or to like taking care of our health. It's just like things on top of each other. And I'm just like, it doesn't have to be this way.
Okay. Well, thank you for being here. I mean, we talked for an hour. I think we got some really good stuff.
Okay. Yeah. I was like, we could talk forever.
Yeah, we could talk forever.
Any final words?
Any
final words?
This would make the sponsors of the film very happy.
Yes.
So when we focus on the abilities that we do have, together we can outride anything. It's kind of like our tagline. Yeah. Because it's true.
It is true. It's a great message, and your story is so inspiring, and we can't wait to see the movie in the spring. We're going to have a watch party. We're going to make it happen. I don't care. I don't care.
I'm sure we can make, we could use one of these walls or something.
Yeah. Maybe the coalition can get something together. We can see what we have in store there.
Yeah.
But we will see Josie many more times. I'm sure we'll have you back on here. The next thing that you do, we want to hear about it. And you want to plug your socials so that we can have our listeners go look at your social media?
Yeah, thanks. I sometimes forget to advocate for myself.
Yeah, so what?
The irony.
So what's your Insta? And
my Instagram is miss.stubbornness.
Love it.
I just love it because it's funny.
Yes.
Oh my God, also, did I tell you the name of the film?
No, you didn't.
Trendsetters.
Trendsetters. It's like trendsetters, but it's tread.
I know, it's so good. That's how I know that it's worth fighting for. I'm like, it's funny and it's funny.
Yeah, that's super cool. Okay, well, miss.stubbornness on Instagram. This was Josie Fouts. My name is Elizabeth Bowersox, joined here with Daniel Rodriguez. And thank you for listening to The Weekly Spoke. We will see you